cadet, Mia Dawson, endured another day of whispered comments about being too soft for military service. Her quiet demeanor mistaken for weakness by fellow cadets, who couldn't see past her gentle exterior. When General Monroe spotted the hand-carved numbers on her dog tag during inspection, his face went pale. Those coordinates told a story that would silence every critic forever. Fort Harrison's Officer Candidate School buzzed with the intense energy of future military leaders pushing themselves through the crucible of advanced training. The Georgia summer heat shimmered off the parade grounds where cadets drilled in perfect formation, their movements synchronized through months of rigorous preparation. Inside the air-conditioned classrooms and tactical simulation centers, the atmosphere was equally demanding as instructors tested not just physical capabilities, but mental resilience, leadership potential, and the kind of decision-making skills that would determine life and death in combat situations. This was where the military's next generation of officers was forged through pressure, competition, and the relentless pursuit of excellence. Cadet Mia Dawson moved through Fort Harrison with the quiet efficiency of someone who had learned that survival often depended on being underestimated. At 26, she was older than most of her fellow cadets. Her late entry into officer training explained in her file as a career change from civilian medical work. Her slight build and soft-spoken manner made her appear almost fragile among the aggressive personalities that dominated military training environments. What her classmates saw as weakness was actually the product of experiences they couldn't imagine. Mia's gentle approach to leadership exercises and her preference for listening over shouting were interpreted as lack of confidence or inability to command respect. During physical training, she completed every requirement, but never pushed for the top scores that would have drawn attention. In tactical exercises, she focused on medical support roles and precision tasks that others considered less important than direct combat operations. Her dog tags bore the standard military identification, but careful observers might notice additional markings that weren't part of regulation issues, small numbers, and letters etched by hand into the metal with the precision of someone who understood that. Some information was too important to trust to official records. The markings were subtle enough to escape casual notice, but significant enough to tell a story that would redefine everything her peers thought they knew about her. The central challenge Mia faced was the military's tendency to equate leadership with aggression and competence with loudness, creating an environment where her actual experience and capabilities were not just unrecognized, but actively dismissed. Her quiet competence was seen as weakness. Her careful approach to decision-making was interpreted as indecision, and her focus on supporting roles was viewed as inability to lead. The challenge would test whether true merit could overcome institutional bias, and whether someone who had already proven themselves in the most extreme circumstances would be given the opportunity to demonstrate their worth in a training environment that valued perception over reality. The opportunity for Mia to demonstrate her true capabilities came during the Advanced Leadership Assessment, a comprehensive evaluation that would determine final rankings and assignment preferences for graduating cadets. The assessment included tactical planning, crisis management simulations, and leadership exercises designed to identify those with the potential for command positions in high-stress environments. Mia's decision to approach the assessment with the same quiet competence that had characterized her entire time at OCS was both strategic and authentic. She understood that trying to suddenly adopt an aggressive leadership style would be false and ultimately ineffective. Instead, she chose to demonstrate the kind of leadership she had learned through actual combat experience, where decisions were based on careful analysis rather than bravado, and where the ability to keep others alive was more important than looking impressive. The choice to remain true to her authentic leadership style was risky in an environment that often rewarded theatrical displays of authority over genuine competence. Mia knew that her approach might be misunderstood by evaluators who expected to see traditional military bearing and aggressive decision-making. But her experience had taught her that real leadership emerged in crisis situations where style mattered less than substance, and where the ability to make sound decisions under extreme pressure was the only thing that kept people alive. Her decision also involved a calculated risk about whether to reveal more of her background if the situation demanded it, though she preferred to let her actions speak for themselves. Mia's approach to the leadership assessment was based on principles she had learned not in textbooks, but in life or death situations where theoretical knowledge met the harsh reality of combat operations. Her plan was to demonstrate competence through careful preparation, thorough analysis, and decisive action when required, rather than through the kind of dramatic leadership displays that impressed observers but didn't necessarily translate to effective command. Her strategy involved focusing on the medical and logistical aspects of the tactical scenarios, areas where her experience gave her significant advantages over classmates who had only theoretical knowledge. She understood that successful military operations depended on more than just combat effectiveness. They required careful attention to casualty care, supply management, and the kind of detailed planning that kept units functional under extreme stress. The plan also included her decision to mentor struggling classmates, using her experience to help them succeed rather than viewing them as competition. This approach was consistent with her understanding that military effectiveness depended on unit cohesion and mutual support rather than individual heroics. Her strategy reflected her belief that true leadership was demonstrated through results rather than rhetoric, and that the best commanders were those who could bring out the best in their subordinates, while maintaining the calm judgment necessary for sound decision-making. Mia's first major test came during a tactical simulation that required cadets to respond to a complex scenario involving wounded personnel, equipment failures, and time pressure that was designed to overwhelm their decision-making capabilities. While other cadets focused on the combat aspects of the scenario, Mia immediately began organizing medical triage and casualty evacuation procedures with an efficiency that surprised the evaluators. Her performance during the medical emergency portion of the simulation was flawless, demonstrating knowledge and skills that went far beyond the basic first aid training that cadets received. She organized treatment priorities, directed evacuation procedures, and maintained communication with all elements of the simulated operation with the kind of calm competence that suggested extensive, real-world experience. But her classmates' reaction to her performance was mixed, with some interpreting her focus on medical issues as avoiding the real leadership challenges of the combat scenario. Their comments reflected the institutional bias that valued aggressive action over the careful planning and execution that actually determined mission success. The simulation revealed both Mia's exceptional capabilities and the challenge she faced in an environment where those capabilities were not always recognized or valued by peers who had different definitions of military excellence and leadership potential. The first day of the Advanced Leadership Assessment revealed the full extent of the perception gap between Mia's actual capabilities and her classmates' understanding of her potential. During the morning briefing, when cadets were asked to volunteer for leadership positions in the upcoming exercises, Mia was consistently overlooked in favor of more vocal candidates who projected traditional military confidence. Cadet Thompson, a former college football player whose aggressive leadership style had made him popular with instructors, was selected to lead the primary assault team. Cadet Martinez, whose loud voice and decisive manner impressed evaluators, was chosen for the logistics coordination role. Mia was assigned to the medical support team, a position that was seen as important but not central to the exercise's success. Her response to being relegated to a supporting role was characteristic of her approach throughout OCS. She accepted the assignment without complaint and immediately began preparing to execute it with the highest possible standards. Her preparation included detailed analysis of potential casualty scenarios, review of evacuation procedures, and coordination with other support elements that would be crucial if the exercise went according to plan. What her classmates didn't understand was that Mia's focus on medical support came from hard-earned experience about what actually determined success or failure in military operations, where the ability to treat wounded personnel often meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic loss of life. The attention that Mia's performance began to attract came not from her fellow cadets, who remained focused on more dramatic displays of leadership, but from the evaluation team that was observing the exercises with the trained eyes of experienced military professionals. Major Collins, the lead evaluator, began to notice that Mia's medical preparations were far more sophisticated than what would be expected from someone with only basic military training. Her knowledge of advanced trauma procedures, her familiarity with equipment that wasn't part of standard OCS curriculum, and her ability to anticipate medical challenges that other cadets hadn't even considered suggested experience that went beyond what was reflected in her official records. Major Collins made notes about her performance that would later prove significant when the evaluation results were reviewed. General Monroe, who was observing the exercises as part of his periodic review of OCS training standards, also began to take notice of Mia's quiet competence. His experienced eye recognized something familiar in her approach to medical procedures and her calm demeanor under pressure, though he couldn't immediately place what seemed familiar about her performance. The attention from senior officers created opportunities for Mia's true capabilities to be recognized, though she remained focused on executing her assigned role rather than seeking recognition or advancement through political maneuvering. The major breakthrough in understanding Mia's true background came during a particularly challenging phase of the assessment when a simulated casualty scenario overwhelmed the medical capabilities that the exercise planners had anticipated. Multiple wounded cadets required simultaneous treatment. Equipment malfunctioned, and the time pressure created exactly the kind of chaos that separated theoretical knowledge from practical experience. Mia's response to the crisis was immediate and professional, as she took charge of the medical situation with an authority and competence that seemed to come from nowhere. Her triage decisions were perfect, her treatment procedures were textbook, and her coordination of evacuation efforts demonstrated the kind of leadership that couldn't be taught in classrooms or simulations. Most significantly, her performance under extreme pressure revealed training and experience that went far beyond what any cadet should possess. Her familiarity with advanced medical equipment, her knowledge of procedures that weren't part of standard military medical training, and her ability to maintain perfect calm while managing multiple critical patients suggested a background in special operations medicine that wasn't reflected in her official records. The breakthrough attracted the direct attention of General Monroe, who recognized in Mia's performance the kind of competence that he had seen only in the most elite military medical personnel, raising questions about who she really was and what experiences had shaped her exceptional capabilities. As the assessment exercises continued and Mia's performance consistently exceeded expectations, General Monroe began to suspect that there was more to her background than her official records indicated. His decision to conduct a personal inspection of the cadets provided him with the opportunity to examine Mia's equipment and documentation more closely, looking for clues that might explain her exceptional capabilities. The preparation for this inspection was routine for the cadets, who were accustomed to having their uniforms, equipment, and personal items scrutinized by senior officers. But for Mia, the inspection represented a potential moment of revelation, as her dog tags bore markings that could expose the classified nature of her previous service and the experiences that had shaped her approach to military operations. Her preparation involved a decision about whether to attempt to conceal the hand-carved markings on her dog tags or to allow them to be discovered, knowing that recognition could either vindicate her approach to the assessment or create complications that might affect her future military career. The preparation also included mental readiness for the possibility that her cover story about civilian medical experience might be exposed, requiring her to explain her actual background to officers who might not have the clearance to understand the full scope of her previous service. The crisis that would expose Mia's true identity began during what should have been a routine uniform inspection. When General Monroe's experienced eye caught sight of the subtle markings on her dog tags that didn't match standard military issue. The numbers and letters etched into the metal were small and precise, but their significance was immediately apparent to someone with Monroe's background in special operations and classified missions. "Cadet Dawson," Monroe said quietly, his voice carrying a gravity that made everyone in the immediate area take notice. "May I examine your dog tags more closely?" The request was phrased as a question, but his tone made it clear that this was not optional, and that something significant had caught his attention. As Monroe studied the hand-carved markings, Zeon 19B, Echo Point 1722, his expression changed from curiosity to recognition, to something approaching shock. The coordinates, date, and mission designation were burned into his memory as part of one of the most classified and devastating operations in recent military history. A mission that had gone so wrong that its very existence was denied by official sources. The unexpected revelation created immediate tension as Monroe realized that he was looking at someone who had not only participated in Operation Echo Point, but had survived it, making her one of only 3 people who could provide first-hand testimony about what had actually happened during that catastrophic mission. The implications were enormous, both for Mia's current situation and for Monroe's understanding of who had been quietly serving among the OCS cadets. The pivotal moment came when General Monroe quietly asked Mia to step aside for a private conversation, his demeanor making it clear that this was not a disciplinary action, but something far more significant. The other cadets watched with curiosity and concern as their supposedly soft classmate was singled out for personal attention from the base's commanding general. "Those numbers on your dog tag," Monroe said once they were out of earshot, "they refer to Operation Echo Point, don't they?" His question was asked with the careful precision of someone who understood the classified nature of what he was discussing and the importance of maintaining operational security. Even in private conversation, Mia's response was measured and professional, reflecting her understanding that the conversation had moved into territory that required careful handling. "Yes, sir," she replied simply, her voice carrying the weight of experiences that she had never expected to discuss in this context. Monroe's next question revealed the personal significance of the revelation for him. "You were part of the medical team that extracted the survivors from Grid Square Charlie 7, weren't you? The team that saved 11 lives, including mine, during the evacuation under fire." His voice carried a mixture of recognition, gratitude, and amazement as he realized that the cadet who had been dismissed as weak by her peers was actually someone who had saved his life during one of the military's most dangerous operations. The moment of recognition created an immediate shift in the dynamic between Monroe and Mia, as he understood that he was speaking not to a struggling cadet, but to a proven warrior whose capabilities had been tested under the most extreme circumstances imaginable. The turning point came when Monroe realized that Mia's quiet competence and focus on medical procedures weren't signs of weakness, but rather the product of experiences that had taught her what really mattered in life or death situations. Her approach to the OCS exercises made perfect sense when viewed through the lens of someone who had actually lived through the kind of combat operations that the simulations were designed to replicate. "You've been holding back," Monroe observed, his tone carrying understanding rather than criticism. "You know exactly what you're doing, but you've been letting others take the lead because you understand that real leadership isn't about making noise or impressing observers." Mia's confirmation of his assessment was simple but profound. "Sir, I learned that the best leaders are often the ones who focus on keeping people alive rather than looking impressive. In Echo Point, the people who survived were the ones who stayed calm and made good decisions, not the ones who tried to be heroes." The turning point was complete when Monroe understood that Mia's entire approach to OCS had been shaped by combat experience that none of her classmates possessed, and that her apparent weakness was actually the kind of strength that could only be developed through surviving the ultimate test of military service. The final preparation for addressing Mia's situation required General Monroe to balance multiple competing considerations: the need to recognize and utilize her exceptional capabilities, the requirement to maintain operational security regarding classified missions, and the importance of ensuring that her true background didn't create complications for her future military career. Monroe's approach involved reviewing Mia's complete classified service record, which revealed the full extent of her special operations experience and the circumstances that had led to her enrollment in OCS under a cover story that concealed her actual background. The review confirmed what he had suspected, that Mia was not a career-changing civilian, but a highly decorated special operations medic whose previous service had been so classified that even her OCS instructors didn't have access to her real records. The preparation also included consultations with intelligence officials and special operations commanders who could provide context for Mia's situation and guidance on how to handle her case without compromising ongoing operations or exposing sensitive information. Their input would be crucial in determining how to proceed with someone whose actual experience far exceeded that of her instructors. Monroe's final preparation involved developing a plan that would allow Mia to demonstrate her true capabilities while maintaining the operational security that protected both her and the classified missions she had participated in during her previous service. Despite his recognition of Mia's exceptional background and capabilities, Monroe experienced moments of doubt about the wisdom of exposing her true identity and potentially disrupting the careful cover story that had allowed her to serve in a conventional military role. His concern was not about her qualifications, but about the potential consequences of revealing classified information and the impact that recognition might have on her ability to continue serving effectively. The doubt was compounded by his understanding that Mia's preference for anonymity might be based on personal reasons related to her experiences during Operation Echo Point, and that forcing her into a more prominent role might not serve her best interests or psychological well-being. But Monroe's doubt was ultimately resolved by his recognition that the military needed leaders with Mia's experience and capabilities, and that allowing her to continue being underestimated and underutilized would be a disservice both to her and to the institution she served with such distinction. The climactic moment began when General Monroe made the decision to address Mia's situation publicly, calling together the entire OCS class for what he announced would be a discussion about leadership, capability, and the importance of recognizing excellence regardless of its packaging. The pressure was enormous, as Mia realized that her carefully maintained anonymity was about to be stripped away in front of the same classmates who had dismissed her as weak and unsuitable for military leadership. The assembly created a high-stakes environment where Monroe would need to balance recognition of Mia's achievements with protection of classified information, while also educating the cadets about the dangers of making assumptions based on appearance or demeanor. The pressure was equally intense for Mia, who would be forced to confront the misconceptions of her peers while maintaining the operational security that protected sensitive missions and personnel. The moment represented a convergence of personal recognition and institutional learning, that would have lasting impact on everyone present. The initial challenges of the revelation involved Monroe's need to provide enough context for the cadets to understand Mia's exceptional qualifications without compromising classified information or exposing details that could affect national security. His approach required careful selection of information that could be shared publicly while protecting the sensitive aspects of her service record. Additional challenges arose from the cadets' difficulty in reconciling their perceptions of Mia as weak and ineffective with the reality of her extraordinary background and capabilities. Their preconceptions had been so firmly established that accepting the truth about her experience required a fundamental shift in their understanding of what military excellence looked like. The challenges also included Mia's own discomfort with being singled out for recognition, as her preference for anonymity and focus on mission accomplishment over personal glory made the public attention difficult to accept, even when it was intended to honor her service and achievements. The critical moment came when Monroe revealed enough about Operation Echo Point to establish Mia's credentials without compromising classified details, explaining that she had been part of a special operations medical team that had saved multiple lives during one of the military's most dangerous missions. "Cadet Dawson," he announced to the assembled class, "is not a civilian who decided to join the military. She is a decorated special operations medic whose previous service included missions that most of you will never be cleared to know about." The revelation created immediate shock and recognition among the cadets, who suddenly understood that their assessments of Mia had been completely wrong and that they had been dismissing someone whose experience far exceeded their own. The moment was particularly powerful because it demonstrated how completely they had misunderstood what military excellence looked like. Monroe's explanation continued with details about Mia's role in saving lives under extreme conditions, her calm decision-making under fire, and her demonstration of the kind of leadership that emerged not from aggression but from competence, courage, and commitment to keeping others alive. The critical nature of the moment was enhanced by its educational value for all the cadets present. The moment of complete vindication came when Monroe announced that Mia would be appointed as the senior instructor for the medical support section, a position that would allow her to share her experience with future classes while recognizing her exceptional qualifications and leadership capabilities. True strength, Monroe explained to the assembled cadets, is not demonstrated through loudness or aggression, but through competence, composure, and the ability to make sound decisions when lives are at stake. The appointment represented not just personal recognition for Mia, but institutional acknowledgement that the military's definition of leadership needed to include the kind of quiet competence that she had demonstrated throughout her service. Her victory was complete when her classmates, many of whom had dismissed her just hours earlier, approached her with genuine respect and requests to learn from her experience. The transformation from dismissed outcast to recognized expert demonstrated the power of truth over perception and the importance of looking beyond surface appearances to recognize genuine capability and character. The immediate impact of Mia's revelation was a complete transformation of her relationships with fellow cadets, who went from dismissing her as weak to seeking her guidance and mentorship. Her appointment as medical support instructor was met with enthusiasm from cadets who suddenly understood that they had access to someone with real-world experience that could prepare them for the challenges they would face as military officers. The revelation also had immediate impact on OCS training protocols, as instructors began to recognize that their evaluation methods might be missing exceptional candidates who didn't fit traditional molds of military leadership. Mia's case became a catalyst for discussions about how to identify and nurture different types of leadership potential. General Monroe's decision to publicly recognize Mia's achievements while protecting classified details became a model for how the military could honor special operations personnel without compromising operational security, creating precedents that would benefit other veterans whose service had been hidden by classification requirements. The long-term impact of Mia's story extended far beyond Fort Harrison to influence military leadership development and evaluation processes throughout the armed forces. Her case became a powerful example of how exceptional capability could be overlooked when institutions focused on style over substance, leading to changes in how military personnel were assessed and promoted. Mia's approach to instruction, which emphasized practical application over theoretical knowledge and calm competence over dramatic leadership displays, influenced a generation of military officers who learned to value different types of leadership excellence. Her students consistently performed better in real-world situations because they had been taught by someone who understood what actually worked under pressure. The story also became part of military leadership curricula, used to teach future officers about the importance of recognizing talent in all its forms and the dangers of making assumptions based on appearance or demeanor rather than demonstrated capability and character. 2 years after her revelation at OCS, Mia stood before a new class of cadets, her instructor's uniform bearing the ribbons and decorations that finally reflected her true service record. As she began her first lecture on combat medicine, she noticed several cadets who seemed uncertain about their place in the military hierarchy, their quiet demeanor marking them as potential targets for the same dismissive treatment she had once endured. Leadership, she told the class, is not about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the person others can count on when everything goes wrong. Some of the finest leaders I've known were the ones who spoke softly, but acted decisively when lives were at stake. Her words carried the weight of experience earned in the crucible of combat, and her example continued to challenge assumptions about what military excellence looked like, ensuring that future generations of officers would be judged by their character and capability rather than their ability to project traditional images of military authority.